Welcome to the Well Club, where the journey to wellness begins. Take a deep breath, open your mind, and join us as we explore the endless possibilities of well-being. Here's Dr. Rob Douk.
Welcome, listeners, to another enriching episode of the Well Club podcast. Today, we have an incredible guest, Elena Breese, a survivor of the Boston Marathon bombing, who has turned her experience with PTSD into a platform of hope and healing through her blog, Still Blooming Me. Elena's journey is one of resilience, faith, and growth. We'll dive into her powerful story, discussing how she has not only learned to manage her trauma, but also empowered others to bloom in their fullest selves. Elena, we are so excited to have you here. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
We're going to have a lot of fun today. Elena, your story reminds me one of the most beautiful aspects of nature, blooming through adversity. In the Well Club, we emphasize the 9 dimensions of wellness, and I think your experience speaks to so many of these, whether it's emotional resilience, the spiritual journey you've taken, or the way you've connected to a community of fellow survivors. We'll be tying some of these themes together as we move through your story today. So let's jump right in.
Sounds good.
Elena, I don't want to dwell too much on the traumatic events, but I'm really fascinated by the career pivot you made after the bombing. Can you talk a little bit about that decision and what gave you the courage to step into this new direction?
Yeah, well, after the bombing, I was still working in the finance world, kind of more so in a marketing role, and raising 2 really small kids. At the time of the bombing, my kids were 3 and 6 months old. So you can imagine I was like kind of running after toddlers and nursing babies still in the middle of the night. And it wasn't until 3.5 years after the bombing, I was voluntarily hospitalized and finally diagnosed with PTSD. And when I got home from the hospital, I was searching for, resources online. I was trying to connect with anyone who had tools that I could use, or just I was trying to see my story reflected in the PTSD conversation. And I just really wasn't. Everything was very military and veteran focused, which we know is incredibly important. But I saw an opportunity to share my story and maybe be a source of inspiration for others. And I really just started sharing while I was healing. And I still am healing today. But I mean, when I began writing, it was, within a few weeks after my hospitalization. So it was just a very cathartic process that I was sharing. And then it just kind of took off from there.
That's beautiful. And for listeners who might not know what PTSD is post-traumatic stress disorder. And we can get into more of that as we share Elena's story and her inspiring journey. That's so beautiful. You took this event and you were able to, and like you're saying now, you're still healing, but you made use of this as a platform for others. I would imagine because you don't want them to feel isolated or alone, right? So just sharing and being vulnerable. Can you talk a little bit about how that's built a community?
Yeah. Well, I think whenever you're facing something scary or new, you're kind of looking for an example of someone who's been there, and like right. You want that tangible proof of like, yes, they've healed and they're still functioning and they're living a productive life. I think we all have kind of that picture of what our life is going to look like, right? And that's what we want it to be. So I was searching for that example, and I found it later on. But I think what continues to inspire me to work today is knowing that there are people out there like in that state of mind that I was in, and they are needing that example. And if I can show them that life does go on, you will move forward, you will get better. That's why I keep going. So
wow. And on this journey, what have you learned as it's evolved, this whole PTSD journey of yours, that maybe you didn't learn in the beginning that's been helpful for those that are maybe just curious whether or not they've suffered PTSD? What can you share with them?
I mean, I could answer this question for years. I think PTSD is an onion and there are a lot of layers to it. And as you start to find resources and therapeutic modalities that are a good fit for you, good therapists and doctors and psychiatrists, and you start to unpeel this, you start to get through the layers of your onion. I mean, you will find challenges that will be met with medications or EMDR therapy or acupuncture. I think what I've learned that has helped me the most is to be open-minded to my healing. I wasn't sure how it was going to come to be. I
Right.
just knew that I kind of needed to come at it and throw as many things at it as I could at the same time. And that's really what I think expedited my healing, that I was willing to try anything and do anything. And I just wanted to heal. I wanted to get better. So, I mean, I think PTSD, I continue to learn from it as I get older and I kind of grow a perspective and looking back and seeing how messy it was and maybe how I could have done it better in those early years, but I didn't know what I didn't know.
Right.
And so I can only move forward.
I love that. So just be open-minded with the process.
Yes.
And going back to those early years, you made the statement, file away this experience. Can you expand a little bit about that for listeners that might be maybe experiencing the same?
Yeah.
What was that like for you, and what was that journey for you like?
Well, I mentioned before my kids were really young when the bombing happened. And so I just I think what you're referring to is I tried to just file the bombing away in like that place in my mind of things to forget, and my body just was not going to have that, because so many of the symptoms that I was experiencing were somatic symptoms. So that's, body symptoms, pain, fatigue, headaches, among other things, heart palpitations, sort of these, things, physical manifestations of the trauma. And so it was really hard because I didn't know what was happening to me. I didn't know, like I said before, I didn't know what I didn't know. And so when I finally was hospitalized and they explained, okay, you have PTSD, this is going to take some, cognitive therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, or EMDR, you need to basically rewire your brain and desensitize some of this trauma so that you can bring yourself back to baseline, because I had been living in such a heightened state of awareness for 3.5 years. It was challenging and it took a lot of work.
Yeah.
And I realize now, I know now, even if you try and forget, your body doesn't forget. Your body keeps the score, right? I think we know that from some amazing books that are out there.
That's great. Yeah. For those tuning in, your story is a great reminder of, as much as we have these responsibilities to care for others, as a mom and as, taking care of kids, to file it away, it will manifest, and it won't go away until you start the work and the journey when you're ready. And for you, what have you found to be some of those good, therapeutic type things that you would encourage others to explore if this is part of their journey?
I mean, for me, trauma therapy has been hugely, largely beneficial. I've been in EMDR therapy my hospitalization was 8 years ago this last August. And I started with an EMDR therapist right out of the hospital, but she wasn't really the right fit for me. So it took a little while to find the right person. And once I did, I got busy working with her, and I still see her today. We kind of do, quarterly check-ins. I don't need to go once a week like I used to, or once a month, or, whatever. The frequency was a lot more often when I was acutely sick. But she's there. She's still a resource for me, and I can count on her. She's part of my team. And then because like I mentioned before, a lot of my symptoms were somatic, I started working with an acupuncturist. And she's also a naturopathic doctor, but she focuses primarily on acupuncture with mental health care. So she's incredible. And I see her twice a month to maintain the chi, the balance of energy in your body. And I actually have started prerequisites to go to school to get my PhD in acupuncture too.
No way.
So
Look at
yeah,
that.
we'll see.
What a
We'll see.
journey.
I'm
Wow, that's so
on
cool.
the really long the long road with that, because my kids are in
Sure.
school, so I need one of
Oh,
them to be driving before I can.
yeah.
But I'm working
Ex-
on prereqs
oh,
right now.
that's
So
so exciting. That's so
yeah,
exciting. Yeah, like, I mean, this is nothing like your story, but I remember a shoulder injury I had that I ignored. I filed it away, I
yeah,
was working out and I was like, I can kind of push through this. I've always done it before. And then it definitely, I mean, I heard a real big tear. And then that spiraled into like a really long time of just recovery. It ended up being frozen. I've tried everything. And I found down the street from where I was living, I said, why not? I was being open-minded to different treatments. And I tried acupuncture for the first time. And prior to that, I was in PT, everything, and just sometimes it's timing too. But like this acupuncturist she was just amazing. I mean, she
that's
would
so
almost do
great.
counseling in there too with me,
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
while
Yep.
while the needles and everything she's doing what she's doing, right? And that was actually the thing that actually loosened my muscle and kind of got me back
Yep.
to the stimulation that I needed in the area, and I really quickly recovered after 6 weeks after that treatment. So
That's
yeah,
incredible.
stoked for your journey ahead too, like how
Yeah.
you found this and are now on that journey.
Oh, I've fallen in love with acupuncture. So hopefully one day I'll be able to treat people more hands-on, because I just believe in it so much. And then, a lot of this has been, working with a naturopathic doctor to figure out what deficiencies I have that might be contributing to some of the symptoms. And then in August is my birthday month, so I gave myself I gave myself a big gift. I went to the Amen Clinic here in Scottsdale and had the full brain scan spec evaluation. And so that I always felt, you break your arm and you go get an x-ray and they look at it and then they fix it. And I had never had someone look at my brain and say, okay, like this is what's really going on. But it was an incredible eye-opening experience, and I'm excited to continue to work with them too. And then psychiatry is also part of my plan. I was able to manage this without medication for several years, and the last 4 years, medication's been a part of my my wellness journey, and I thank it every day.
I love that. Well, just in the short bit that you're already sharing, I could hear in your story what's so integral to like the 9 dimensions of wellness that we talk about. Within that first dimension is intellectual wellness. It's just your resilient is born from what I'm hearing, your inquisitive nature to like explore and be open-minded and try different things and learn, because that renewal of the mind is really such a powerful place to be in. And I can just only imagine. And there's days where it's really hard, to get out of bed and to do those things. But I think you're really on this journey. It's an adventurous one at that, of just intellectual stimulation of, what we call intellectual wellness. So I applaud you for that. And I'm excited to kind of follow your journey ahead.
It's funny you brought that up, just to touch back on
Yeah,
that. So, there's an incredible book by Dr. Eater, butcher her name, Dr. Edith Eger. I don't know if you've read her
I'm not
books.
sure. Yeah.
She's a Holocaust survivor, and she talks
Oh, okay.
about the gifts that you're born with, like your innate gifts that come most naturally to you, and how it's important when you're struggling to tap into those gifts for strength, and because those are the easiest things that you can tap into and harness, right? And I was born a curious kid, so my curiosity, you're right, it has helped. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so good. In moments where you're utterly stuck, though, it sounds like through our reading of your blogs and everything, I'm curious to hear from you directly how faith has played a role in your recovery and your healing and your journey ahead.
Yeah, I think, I was born and raised Catholic, and my faith is still very important to me today. I think what I have learned about my faith is that it has given me hope. And I think if you don't have hope, that any struggle or challenge in life is really hard, right? To see through to the other side if you don't have hope. So I think that's where my faith has really helped me the most.
Yeah, we've seen folks that within our community, faith has really helped them press through those really difficult moments because they can see beyond the now and have hope in that future. I think that's so powerful. And so thank you for connecting that.
Well, and it even started in the hospital because there was a chaplain there who would come and visit, and he gave me like a scripture prescription. And so I was able to really cling to that too through my hospitalization. And that was a real faith reminder in there when I was really at my lowest. So,
Wow. I mean, third person looking in, it just seems like you're reading, phrases and words. But so in those lowest of low moments, how powerful was the scripture that it propelled you out of that? That's essentially faith. You're putting belief into hope in the future. Can you talk a little bit about that for some of our listeners who may need to anchor into that today?
I think for me, when I had him there supporting me in those really dark moments, it was very comforting. And then remembering that God is always with me, just like that. And I'm very close to Mother Mary. She's just like always with me, and I keep her with me always. So, having God and Jesus and Mary just with me and keeping them close was so comforting through my hospitalization. And then as I've gone on through this journey of healing, it has not always been easy. There have been a lot of rough times, a lot of rough spots. And I think going back to those relationships, knowing they're always there to listen to me, even like just reminding me I'm never alone in this, has
That's what I'm
been so
hearing.
comforting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you've spoken candidly about your time in the hospital, and that's what I'm hearing through your voice and what you just shared is that you're never alone. You have comfort, you have hope. Going back to just your overall treatment, which is really where I want to, I think we both wanted to focus this talk on more, that I think it's invaluable for folks to explore. What other modalities and treatments have you explored that have given you some relief? Books, just anything,
A
kind
lot
of
of
within your journey.
reading. I read a ton. Yeah. And I find for me, when I'm struggling mentally, I have a hard time reading. So I'll listen to books. So I'll listen through Audible. while I'm walking or, doing things around the house. And that's a really good way to absorb things. I think that's not uncommon for people to have a hard time reading something when they're anxious or depressed. It's hard to process. So I read a lot. I exercise a lot. So I lift heavy weights 3 days a week, and then I walk every day. So I walk 2 miles every day, and it's important to be out in the sunshine as much as you can be. I'm lucky I live in Arizona, so we don't have, a shortage of sunshine here. In fact, we're like so sick of the sun. It's too hot.
Plenty. Yeah. That's so good.
But yeah, being in the sun, finding a lot of ways to be grounded. So I garden anytime my hands are in the dirt. That's really good. And then, my kids are very grounding for me too. They keep me really busy. I think finding healthy distractions is important. And they've been like, they're my greatest gifts. So
yeah. How old are they now?
They are 14 and 12.
Oh my goodness. I have a 14-year-old. Yeah. He's my oldest. Yeah. And I've got 14, 12, and 8. So
oh wow.
I know that life stage really well. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun.
It is, although my 14-year-old is a daughter. So teenage girls are a little
okay, yep.
They may be a little more challenging here, like emotionally, but yeah, they humble you, and keep you grounded. So they keep me on my toes. But other therapeutic modalities, I've done float therapy, sound healing, Reiki.
Yeah.
Yoga is really good.
It's really big out there too in Arizona, isn't it? A lot of those modalities. So yeah, I think you're fortunate to have an eclectic variety of options to explore.
Sacral cranial healing, that is really good. Sorry to interrupt you. I'm just going through like the Rolodex in my mind.
No, spit them out. I think, and so you've put yourself through a lot of your own anecdotal testing of what's worked for you.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. I think, this kind of just drives me back to when we focus, you're building your own menu of the 9 dimensions of wellness that we talk so much about, I
need to hear more about this.
Yeah. It's just not, because really you can't fragment a complex ailment and silo it. And I think what you're doing, everything I hear that you're doing, it's we live and breathe that with intellectual wellness, where you're pursuing all these things. You're doing emotional wellness. You're trying all these. You're doing physical wellness. I just shared yesterday on another podcast a study that we came across that came out of Australia that they found this small group did better exercising 1.5 times better than counseling and being on medication for depression. And so just building all these different dimensions into your regimen, it's a really holistic approach to it.
Yeah, you have to really come at it from every angle. And I think it's really easy to get stuck in fad things too. I've been guilty of it myself, and I think it's really important to find balance. I think balance is the better way to go, instead of getting really like stuck in some of those like new fad type diets, or I see a lot of things about like going plant-based for mental health. I've already tried that. It doesn't work. So you just really have to find a balance.
One of the other dimensions we talk about that you seem to have really figured out for yourself is, we call it social wellness, but you built a real community around PTSD. Seems like you're also giving back and also receiving within that community, and you guys are kind of journeying through it together. Can you tell me a little bit how that started and how it's going now?
Are you referring to Strength to Strength? or?
Yep. I mean, even your online community, I think there's a lot of work that you've done. And it just seems like you're an advocate for what you're going through and how it's impacted others.
Yeah, definitely. I consider myself a mental health advocate first and foremost. I was fortunate to connect to other survivors of terrorism through Still Blooming Me. It kind of got a little, I was able to write for a few more like larger publications early on in this journey. And so I was able to get introduced to some survivors that I didn't even know that they had this amazing network called Strength to Strength. It was founded by my really good friend, Sari Singer. She's a victim of terror. She survived a bus attack in Israel a little over 20 years ago. So she started this organization, and it's basically just victims helping victims get through a lot of these symptoms and get through life together. Basically, we support each other, daily or through our anniversaries, which are really important. And yeah, I have so many incredible friendships. My family feels supported. My husband feels supported, which is really important. And yeah, we've been able to go to retreats with other survivors, and it's been wonderful. And then as far as Still Blooming Me goes, I think I hear from people, on a weekly, sometimes daily basis who are struggling just through social media. And I've been able to speak, and I've met so many amazing people who are doing work like you too. And yeah, so I just keep going. I sometimes think, I think my work is done. I think it's okay. I can wrap it up. And then I get busy again.
Your story reminds me of I was on a hike recently here in Hawaii, and it's essentially a big rock. And I caught this woman taking a photo of really she was very intently focused on this photo, and she was just amazed at the beautiful flower that was blooming out of this rock. That you would seemingly think that there's nothing that can grow out of this rock, this really hard rock that seems like there's no good soil out of it. And so, but you've been, able to manage to turn your circumstance around and build something like this and create this community. So that's why I wanted to highlight that, because I do think a part of a healing journey, a wellness journey, having camaraderie and having like-minded people along to kind of cheer you on, and also to cry with you, and also to be with you in those low moments and celebrate the high moments is such a significant part of the journey. And so for those listening, I just encourage folks to do their best to reach out when you can, and I know it's hard at times when you're feeling so low and depressed. It's so easy to kind of curl up or not get out of bed, but I think that would be the encouragement for the day.
Yeah, I think being able to find connection with others who've been through something that you've survived is a crucial piece to this. When I finally met other survivors, there was like a tremendous amount of loneliness, like a weight that I had been carrying that I didn't even know I had until I met them. And I just felt this weight lift off me. And it was just this, because my husband wasn't at the bombing, he was running, right? So he was like a few miles away. And so it was something that I experienced, and I needed someone to talk to, but I didn't really have someone who I could talk to about it, or who I could share those really, dark feelings or concerns with. So
we've been talking a lot about folks who might be kind of struggling with PTSD, or may not even realize it. What are some misconceptions? Let's start there. And what are some misconceptions that you want to share for, it could be, right, significant others who have someone in their family, loved ones in their lives that they want to support, but they're not sure how to. So maybe they can overcome some of these misconceptions with the journey that you've taken. Anything you can kind of shed light on?
Something comes to mind right away. I notice in this PTSD conversation, there's a lot of like trauma comparison. And I think it's really important that everybody understand that it doesn't matter what your trauma is, the symptoms of PTSD are the same. So if you've been in a car accident, if you've lost a child, if you've suffered from rape or abuse, or you're a veteran who's been in combat, or you're a victim of terror, or it doesn't matter what that trauma is, you're gonna have the same symptoms. So that to me is really important to convey, because my trauma was 12 seconds. There were 12 seconds between the bombs, and I walked away forever changed. I didn't experience combat on a day-to-day basis. I didn't experience war, and I didn't experience rape or all these other things, but it really doesn't matter what it was. The symptoms are the same. So that to me is important. And then I hear a lot of people minimize PTSD in a way like, oh my gosh, when I was at the dentist, this happened and that gave me PTSD, or that, whatever. And I'm just like, I don't say anything, but in my mind, I'm like, you have no idea what you're talking about right now. So I think anytime you minimize anything serious like that, but PTSD is one that's kind of easy to say because it's just, I don't know, it rolls off the tongue. It kind of minimizes the experience that I've been through.
Thank you for pointing that out. I think that's a critical thing to share, because it allows then a more broad landscape of folks who share a lot of the similar challenges within that category. Actually, I was smuggled out of a death camp in Cambodia at 2 months of age, and so my parents have lived through PTSD from then. And I remember, and I recall in grad school when I was still at UCLA, I shared. There was a short stint where I was caring for my grandmother, and I would hear her scream at night and replay some of these things, and that kind of night terror that she frequently visited her was no, it sounds very different than a nightmare that my kids have. So it's a real thing, and that's why I think this is such an important topic to talk about, and how to surround yourself with the right community to try to go about this and take this journey in a manner where you get the support that you need. You call I think first and foremost, you mentioned that you're a mental health advocate. How much of self-advocacy have you had to do that you want to encourage others with, right? I mean, I'm oftentimes, I realize even when I go see my primary care physician and just my dentist, I tend to have to kind of ask the right questions. Otherwise, I wonder if, I was going to get the output that I needed. So what role did that play for you?
I wouldn't be here today if I didn't fight for my life. I have fought so hard and I've not worked at anything as hard as I've worked at this. This has been the most challenging thing I've ever gone through. And I've been through many doctors to try to get to the right answers for me. And I've searched for doctors who have a similar mindset as I do. I wanted to be treat myself as holistically as I could. That was important to me. It still is. My psychiatrist is very holistic as well. So it took me like I say to people, I became the CEO of my own healing. And I worked hard to put my dream team of doctors and therapists and all the people that were going to be on this team together for me. but that took an incredible amount of energy and resources. And so I do want to say, yes, I am very lucky. I am so fortunate that we had the resources that I could work at this. Not a lot of people do. And I recognize that. I think it's important to share that.
That's really good. I think that gives people hope, that it's not a magic bullet, that they just somehow haven't stumbled across, that it is going to require work. So for those tuning in, I think it's just a reminder that it's okay to go out after it and ask the questions, and be curious about your prognosis and your journey towards well-being. On this journey, I don't know why, but I keep replaying your kids and kind of how they've journeyed with you through this. What has that conversation been like between you and them, and how has that evolved now that they're older now?
Yeah, well, the conversation continues to evolve. My husband is from Boston, and we have a second home back there. So we spend a lot of time there. And initially, the conversation was very surface level because I want them to feel safe there. And I want them to feel safe in public places. And unfortunately, they're growing up in like today, in this day and age where like going to school isn't even safe for a lot of kids, and it's terrifying. So we have a lot of conversations about mental health in our house. It will always be a conversation we talk about, and frequently over the years, I've had to tell them like, hey, I'm struggling. I'm going through some sleep issues right now, or, I've had to kind of let them into my world and what I'm feeling in a way that I think is okay for them to hear. I don't use scary language. I try and say, but mommy will be okay. I'm working with my doctor. We're figuring it out. But right now I'm having a little hard time with my sleep, or, whatever it is. So I think we're just trying to be honest with our kids, but also, let the conversation like evolve with time with their questions. When we first told Mallory, my daughter, about the bombing, her concern was if the bad guys were found, that was, and so it was like, of course, yes. And that's really where the conversation was. We let her lead it with her questions. So I think kids, they're naturally curious, and we try and like dump all the details on them, but maybe they don't need them all at that time. So that's kind of, we've let them lead the conversation, over time too. So
yeah, what good training ground for them to learn about life and how to deal with some of these hiccups throughout life and how to handle it, in a healthy manner. So, and you're modeling that for them.
And we took them back. So, Jeff didn't finish the race in 2013. So we went back for the 5-year anniversary, and my husband ran and finished, and the kids and I were at the finish line again. Well, they weren't with me the first time, but they were with me the second time when he finished. Mm-hmm. So that was such a good thing for them to be a part of, because we were both doing something hard that day, right? Dad was running 26.2 miles, and I was standing, where my trauma happened, and they were with me, and I wanted them to feel safe. But I wanted them to see us both do that hard thing and finish.
What a milestone.
Yeah. So now that chapter's closed. No more marathons. We're all good. Yeah.
How did you know that you were ready in your journey to go back? Was there kind of a pivotal moment, a team of clinicians around you kind of, encouraging you? Like, how did you know?
Well, I did not know. I'm not a one fund recipient, but friends of ours are, and that's the foundation that was started for survivors. And they get bibs every year. So, my friend said, hey, I have an extra bib. if you want to fundraise for something, and he ended up fundraising for Strength to Strength. But it was the 5-year anniversary, and he said, "I'm ready. Are you?" And I said, "Well, I think I can be." So I did some therapy, and honestly, I felt a lot of peace while we were there. So I think it was really good timing, and it was great. I'm glad we did it. I'm really glad.
And this has been such a just joyous conversation with you. I do have just one last question, and as we're looking ahead, what would you hope for in the future for yourself and for those impacted by PTSD?
Well, I think the conversation for others, like, we're living in a really amazing time where a lot of resources and conversations like ours today are being had about PTSD and other mental health challenges. So we're very lucky. 20, 30 years ago, people weren't talking about these things, and so there are incredible resources and tools that I encounter every day. People are emailing me about this new tool they've made or a new app or whatever, and they really work. I mean, there are some incredible tools and resources out there. So I would say I'm just hopeful that the medications will get better, the therapies will get better, and that if we can get more conversations around prevention, and that is treatment within the first 30 to 60 days after the trauma, then the chances of it developing into PTSD are much smaller. That's where we really need to focus the conversation. I think for me, looking forward, like I mentioned before, I would really love to be able to treat and be more hands-on for people. I think that would be a great manifestation of my gifts. And then I think, I would really like to continue to work on my own brain health. I think, I'll share something personal. My mom has early onset dementia. And so I'm really focused on preventing that in my own life. And if I can continue to just really take good care of myself and feed myself good foods and work out and all of those things, that I'll be around for a really long time and I'll have a wonderful memory. I don't want to forget any of this.
Elena, it's been such a privilege to hear your story today.
Thank you.
Your courage and dedication to blooming despite the hardships are beyond inspiring. For our listeners, remember that true wellness is about embracing the entirety of who you are, mind, body, and spirit. Thank you for being a part of the Well Club community and for continuing to share your light with the world.
Thanks for having me.
This has been the Well Club. Remember that wellness is not a destination, but a continuous path of growth and self-discovery. To learn more about Dr. Rob Douk, go to drdouk.com. Until next time, stay curious, stay inspired, and always remember to nurture your well-being. The Well Club is a production of Forbes Books.